I never thought I'd meet the love of my life at a funeral, but life doesn't ask permission to surprise you. It was raining the day I buried my father. Not the kind of rain you see in movies, gentle and poetic. This was cold, relentless, almost angry. I stood under a black umbrella that did nothing to keep me dry, watching them lower the casket into the ground. My mother was beside me, silent. My younger sister was crying. I felt nothing, just empty. The chapel had been full of people I didn't know, distant relatives, old colleagues of my father's, neighbors who pretended to care. Everyone spoke in hushed tones, offering condolences that sounded rehearsed. I nodded. I thanked them. I played the role of the grieving son. But inside, I was numb. My father and I had been close once. When I was a kid, he was my hero. But somewhere along the way, life got complicated. Work consumed him. I moved to another city for college and never really came back. We talked on the phone sometimes, mostly about surface things. I kept telling myself I'd visit more, I'd make time. Then he had a heart attack at 58, and time ran out. The guilt was suffocating. After the burial, everyone gathered at a nearby community hall. There were sandwiches and coffee, and people stood around talking about how good a man he was. I couldn't stay inside. The walls felt too close, the air too thick with perfume and pity. I stepped out onto the back patio, lighting a cigarette I'd bummed off my uncle, even though I'd quit years ago. That's when I saw her. She was standing alone near the garden, under a small awning, staring at nothing. She wore a simple black dress and held a cup of coffee with both hands like she was trying to warm herself. Her dark hair was pulled back, and even from a distance, I could see the exhaustion in her posture. She looked lost. I almost went back inside, but something about the way she stood there, so isolated in her grief, made me stay. I walked over slowly, unsure of what to say. "Mind if I stand here?" I asked quietly. She glanced up, startled, then shook her head. "No, go ahead." We stood in silence for a moment. The rain had softened to a drizzle. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the muffled sound of conversations from inside. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said suddenly. Her voice was soft but steady. "Thank you. You too." She looked confused for a second, then gave a sad smile. "I'm not here for your father. I'm here for my aunt. Different funeral, same venue. They scheduled 2 services today." I felt stupid. "Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed." "It's okay." She sipped her coffee. "Grief looks the same everywhere." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. "Were you close to her, your aunt?" She hesitated. "She raised me. My parents died in a car accident when I was 7. My aunt took me in. She was everything." The weight of her words hit me then. I looked at her differently, not as a stranger, but as someone who understood loss in a way most people didn't. "I'm sorry," I said, and this time I meant it. "Thank you." She looked down at her coffee. "It's strange, isn't it? How we're supposed to just carry on. Everyone keeps saying she's in a better place, like that's supposed to make it hurt less." "Yeah," I exhaled slowly. "People don't know what to say, so they say what they think they're supposed to." "Exactly." We fell into silence again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that exists between 2 people who don't need to fill the space with meaningless words. "I'm Emma," she said, extending her hand. "Daniel." I shook it. Her hand was warm despite the cold air. "Do you want to get out of here?" she asked suddenly, surprising both of us. "I mean, I can't go back in there. Everyone wants to hug me and tell me stories about her, and I can't." I understood completely. "Yeah, let's go." We left without telling anyone. I felt guilty for a moment, but not enough to stop. We walked to a small cafe a few blocks away, the kind of place that's always empty on weekday afternoons. We ordered coffee and sat by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. "Tell me about your father," Emma said. I didn't expect the question. Most people avoided asking.
They assumed it was too painful, but Emma wasn't most people. He was a good man, worked too much, cared too much about providing, and not enough about being present. I resented him for a long time because of that. Then I became an adult and realized I was doing the same thing, prioritizing everything except the people that mattered. Did you ever tell him that? No. The word came out heavier than I intended. I meant to. I kept thinking I had time. Emma reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. It was a simple gesture, but it cracked something open inside me. I felt tears sting my eyes, and I looked away, embarrassed. "It's okay," she whispered. We talked for hours that day, about loss, about regret, about the strange, terrible ways life forces you to grow up. Emma told me about her aunt, about how she'd been diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago and fought so hard only to lose the battle anyway. She told me about the guilt she felt for being relieved it was over, because watching someone you love suffer is its own kind of hell. I told her things I hadn't told anyone, about the last conversation I had with my father 3 weeks before he died, how I'd been distracted, checking emails while he talked, how I'd cut the call short because I had a meeting, how I'd give anything to have that time back. By the time we left the cafe, the rain had stopped. The sky was still gray, but the air felt lighter. "Thank you," I said as we stood on the sidewalk, "for today, for listening." "Thank you too," she smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from her. Do you want to exchange numbers? Maybe we could talk again sometime." "I'd like that." Over the next few weeks, we texted every day. Small things at first. "How are you? Did you sleep okay? Have you eaten?" Then deeper things. She told me about her job as a teacher, about her students who made her laugh even on bad days. I told her about my work in graphic design, about the projects I poured myself into to avoid thinking about anything real. We met for coffee twice more, then dinner, then walks through the park, even though it was getting colder. I found myself thinking about her constantly, the way she tilted her head when she listened, the way she laughed, quiet and genuine, the way she carried her grief with such grace, never using it as an excuse to stop living. But I also felt guilty. Was it wrong to feel this way so soon after losing my father? Was I using her to distract myself from the pain? Was she doing the same with me? One evening, about a month after the funeral, we were sitting on a bench by the river. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and pink. Emma was quiet, staring at the horizon. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Of course." "Do you think it's wrong, what we're doing?" My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "This. Us." She gestured vaguely between us. "Meeting the way we did, bonding over death. Is it healthy?" I thought about it carefully. "I don't know, but I know that when I'm with you, I feel less alone, and maybe that's enough." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "I feel the same way, Daniel, but I'm scared. I'm scared that we're just two broken people clinging to each other because we don't know how else to cope." "Maybe we are," I admitted, "but maybe that's okay. Maybe we're allowed to find something good, even in the middle of something terrible." "Are we, though?" Her voice cracked. "My aunt died, your father died, and here we are falling for each other like it's some kind of romance novel. Doesn't that feel wrong to you?" "Sometimes," I said, honestly, "but then I think about how short life is, how my father ran out of time, and your aunt ran out of time, and we're still here, we're still alive, and I don't think they'd want us to stop living because they're gone." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to use you as a Band-Aid." "You're not," I reached for her hand, "and I'm not using you either. I'm drawn to you because you understand something most people don't. You know what it's like to lose everything and still have to wake up the next day and pretend you're okay. And I don't have to pretend with you. I don't have to pretend with you either." We sat there until the sun disappeared completely and the streetlights flickered on. Neither of us wanted to leave. Neither of us wanted to face the world outside this moment.
Things got harder after that conversation. Emma started pulling away. She'd take hours to respond to my texts. She'd cancel plans at the last minute. I knew she was struggling with her own guilt, her own doubts, and I didn't know how to help her without pushing too hard. My mother noticed the change in me. One Sunday, when I visited her for lunch, she asked if I was seeing someone. "Sort of," I said vaguely. "Sort of?" I sighed. It's complicated. My mother set down her fork and looked at me with those knowing eyes that only mothers have. "Daniel, your father and I had our problems, but one thing I never doubted was that he loved me, and he would want you to be happy. He wouldn't want you to put your life on hold because of guilt." "How did you know?" "I'm your mother. I know everything." She smiled sadly. "Whoever she is, if she makes you feel alive again, don't let her go. Life's too short for hesitation." Her words stayed with me. That night, I texted Emma. "Can we talk? In person?" She responded an hour later. "Tomorrow, same bench by the river." I barely slept that night. I kept rehearsing what I wanted to say, but every version sounded wrong. By the time I met her the next evening, had given up on planning and decided to just be honest. Emma was already there when I arrived. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping either. "Hi," I said, sitting down beside her. "Hi." We sat in silence for a moment. The river flowed quietly beside us, indifferent to our struggles. "I've been thinking a lot," Emma said finally. "About us, about everything." My heart sank. I braced myself for the worst. "I think I've been so afraid of doing the wrong thing that I've forgotten how to do anything at all. My aunt spent her last 2 years fighting for more time, and here I am wasting the time I have because I'm scared." I waited, not daring to interrupt. "I don't know if what we have is built on grief or if it's something real," she said, her voice shaking. "But I know that I think about you all the time. I know that you make me want to try again, to live again, and I think that has to mean something." Relief washed over me. "It means everything." "But I need you to be honest with me," she said, turning to face me. "Are you with me because you want to be, or because you're running from something?" "Both," I admitted. "I'm running from the guilt of not being there for my father, but I'm also running toward you, because you make me feel like maybe I'm not as broken as I thought I was. Maybe we're both broken, but maybe that's okay." Emma's eyes shimmered with tears. "I'm terrified of this, Daniel. Of us. Me too. But I don't want to let fear win anymore." "Neither do I." She leaned forward, and I met her halfway. Our lips touched gently, tentatively, like we were both afraid the moment might shatter. But it didn't. It held. And for the first time in months, I felt something other than grief. The next few months weren't easy. We both had bad days. Days where the weight of loss felt too heavy to carry. Days where we questioned everything. But we faced them together. Emma introduced me to her students, and I watched her light up in a way I'd never seen before. She introduced me to her friends, who eyed me suspiciously at first, but warmed up when they saw how she smiled around me. I took her to my father's grave. We stood there, in silence, for a long time, and then Emma spoke quietly. "I wish I could have met him. I think he would have liked you." And I meant it. We didn't talk about the future much. We took things one day at a time. Some days were good, some days were hard. But we learned that grief doesn't disappear just because you find happiness. It becomes part of you, woven into the fabric of who you are. One night, about 6 months after we met, we were lying in bed in her apartment. The room was dark except for the faint glow of streetlights through the window. Emma's head was on my chest, and I was running my fingers through her hair. "Do you think they'd be proud of us?" she asked quietly. "Who?" "Your dad, my aunt. Do you think they'd be happy that we found each other?" I thought about it. I think they'd want us to be happy, and I think we're getting there." "Yeah," she snuggled closer. "I think so too." We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two people who'd met in the darkest moments of their lives and somehow found light. It wasn't a perfect love story. It was messy and complicated and built on a foundation of loss, but it was real, and maybe that's all that matters. Sometimes I think about that rainy day at the funeral, about how close I came to not walking over to her, to not saying anything, to staying in my own isolated grief, and I'm grateful I didn't. Because Emma taught me that it's okay to be broken. It's okay to grieve, but it's also okay to let yourself feel joy again, even when it feels wrong, especially when it feels wrong. We still visit the graves, hers and mine. We bring flowers and tell stories and sit in the quiet. And sometimes, when we leave, we hold hands a little tighter, reminded that life is fragile and fleeting and precious. A year later, Emma and I moved in together. It was a small apartment in the city, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We painted the walls together, argued about furniture placement, and christened the space with takeout pizza on the floor because we hadn't bought a dining table yet. Life became routine in the best way possible. Morning coffee together, her grading papers while I worked on design projects, weekend trips to nowhere in particular. We learned each other's rhythms, each other's silences. But grief has a way of resurfacing when you least expect it. It happened on what should have been my father's 60th birthday. I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that I couldn't shake. Emma noticed immediately. "Talk to me," she said, setting down her coffee. "It's his birthday." She didn't say anything. She just came over and held me. And I cried. Really cried. The kind of crying I'd been holding back since the funeral. The kind that comes from deep inside, from the place where regret lives. When I finally stopped, Emma pulled back and looked at me with those knowing eyes that only mothers have. "Do you want to do something for him today?" "Like what?" "I don't know. Something he would have liked." We ended up going to a baseball game. My father loved baseball. We used to go together when I was a kid, before life got complicated. Emma didn't know the rules, and I found myself explaining them the way my father had explained them to me. Somewhere around the 7th inning, it hit me that I was passing on his love of the game, even though he wasn't here to see it. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. "Thank you for this," I said to Emma as we left the stadium. "Always." That night, I called my mother. We talked about my father, about the good memories, the funny ones, the ones that made us both laugh and cry at the same time. It felt like healing. Emma's grief resurfaced too, usually around holidays. The first Christmas without her aunt was brutal. We spent it quietly, just the two of us, cooking a meal she used to make. Emma cried while chopping onions, and I pretended not to notice, even though we both knew the tears weren't from the onions. "She taught me this recipe," Emma said, her voice thick. "She said I'd need it someday when I had my own family." "You do have your own family," I said softly. "Me? I'm your family now." She looked at me, eyes red and swollen. "Promise me something." "Anything."
Promise me we won't waste time. Promise me we won't let work or fear or anything else get in the way of actually being present with each other.
"I promise."
We didn't always keep that promise perfectly. We had fights. We had moments where we forgot to be present, where we got caught up in stress and routine. But we tried, and we forgave each other when we failed. One evening, about 18 months after we met, we were sitting on our tiny balcony watching the sunset. Emma was quiet, which usually meant she was thinking about something important. "What if we got a dog?" she said suddenly. I looked at her, surprised. "A dog?" "Yeah, something to take care of, something that needs us." She paused. "My aunt always had dogs. The house felt so empty after they passed. I think I'd like to fill our home with that kind of energy again." Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's get a dog. We adopted a scruffy mutt from the shelter 2 weeks later. We named him Charlie, and he became the third member of our family. He forced us to go on walks, to slow down, to laugh at his ridiculous antics. He was exactly what we needed. People often asked us how we met. In the beginning, we told the truth, but the reactions were always the same: pity, concern, subtle judgment. So we started saying we met at a community event. It was easier than explaining. But with close friends, we told the real story. And sometimes people understood. One of Emma's colleagues, who'd lost her husband years before, told us that finding love in grief wasn't wrong, it was brave. Most people run from their pain, she said. You two ran toward it together. That takes courage. Her words stuck with me. As time passed, the pain of loss didn't disappear, but it changed. It became softer, less sharp. The memories of my father and Emma's aunt became sources of comfort instead of just sadness. We talked about them often, their quirks, their wisdom, their flaws. We kept them alive in our conversations. On the second anniversary of my father's death, I went to his grave alone. I told him about Emma, about our life together, about how I wished he could have met her. I told him I was sorry for the time we lost, but that I was trying to live differently now. I was trying to be present. I think you'd like the man I'm becoming, I said to the headstone. I hope you'd be proud. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment I let myself believe it was his way of answering. That night, Emma made dinner, and we ate on the balcony with Charlie at our feet. The sunset was beautiful, streaks of pink and gold across the sky. I love you, Emma said suddenly, looking at me with those eyes that had first caught my attention at the funeral. I love you too. I mean it, Daniel. I know we came together in the worst possible way, but I wouldn't change it because it brought me to you. I wouldn't change it either. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from truly knowing someone, from seeing them at their worst and choosing to stay anyway. I thought about that rainy day at the funeral, about the broken person I was then, about the broken person Emma was, and I realized we weren't fixed now, we were just broken together, and somehow that made all the difference. Grief had brought us together, but love kept us there. And in the end, maybe that's the real story, not about loss, but about what comes after, about the unexpected ways we heal, about finding someone who sees your scars and doesn't turn away. Emma reached over and took my hand, and I held on tight. Because life is fragile, love is precious, and sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the darkest soil. We met at a funeral, but we found life in each other. And that, I think, is something worth holding on to.